Hey everybody, this is Richard Gibbons, CEO of Bluegrass Realtors and Imagine MLS. And today I'm going to go through this presentation where I'm going to show you what's going on with our building renovation. So I just want to kind of start by setting the structure for you. I'm going to start off with like a what, a why, and a when. And then we're going to kind of go into some of the big questions. These are the big questions that we're getting from a lot of different people, because I want to address those just head on, just right off the bat, because I'm a real big believer in just being open and transparent about these kind of things. And then I'm going to go into like a detailed floor plan review where we're just going to go room by room and talk about every single thing that's happening as part of the renovation. Now, the reason I set it up this way is that some people aren't going to want all those details. You just want to know like just the facts, ma'am, right? And know exactly what's going on. And that's where just anytime you feel like you're satisfied, you can stop. And then just as we go further on, we're going to be getting into more and more detail. So let's just start off with that 30,000 foot view of that what, why, and when. And what's happening right here is there is $1 million building renovation. And we're looking to improve the flexibility of the building. We're going to be enhancing the member experience. And we're looking to offer some new opportunities as well. The substantial improvements are including updating the education center is number one and where the majority of the money is going. We're adding an additional classroom. And then there's these five, we're calling them enhanced member areas that I'll break down in more detail for you later. And then redesigning the reception area is a big part of our focus as well. And one of the things we're really focusing on is making sure that we have a lot of different spaces in the building to meet a variety of different needs. So we're going to have what right now we're calling the casual meeting room. It's good for about 4 to 6 people. We have the Regency room, which would be good for 6 to 12. The boardroom is good for about 8 to 20. The second classroom looking at 12 to 40. And then the education center is 40 to 100 plus people. So the point of that is that we have kind of that second classroom for if you have smaller classes, and then we still have the education center for the bigger classes, or sometimes even simultaneously. I'm sure you guys have been to places where you've been in like a small meeting in a large room and it feels kind of like a big echo chamber. You've probably also been the opposite. You've been in large meetings in smaller rooms and everybody's all crammed in. So we're really just making sure that the building has something for every type of situation that we might need it for. And why are we doing it now? Like I said, we need a more efficient layout in the building. The store is way too big for what we need right now, so we're going to be changing that around. Then back in the back of the building, there's a couple places where I have some extra offices that we're not utilizing, and that's where we get that additional classroom from. We're also updating the technology in the building. I'm going to show you in a second where there's just a lot of really outdated technology, and we want to make especially the education center just a premier place for members coming and getting their education. Creating a more inviting atmosphere. When you guys see the pictures of what we're doing with the reception area, I think that'll really drive home there. Modernizing the facility for membership just in general across the board. The place hasn't seen a lot of updates in a very long time, and some of that I'll show you as well. There's a couple of safety hazards in the building right now. Yes, that's actually true. I'll show you those. And then just in general, maintaining the value of our largest fixed asset. Guys, we're in real estate. We know this, right? If you talk to any of your sellers or buyers and they're asking you about what to do with their home, we're just looking to maintain the value of that fixed asset. There's been a lot of wear and tear in the building, and just in general, it's time for an update to make sure we're making the most of our 10,500 square foot that we have here in the building. So just to kind of go into some more details on that, failing technology. So whenever we do have hybrid options for member forums or your non-CE classes and things like that, we always get feedback from membership about bad sound and video in the education center. That's because, like, for those of you watching online right now, we're using this thing called an owl that is just not great technology. It's not really meant for a space of this size. It's only meant for like much smaller, like maybe 10 to 12 person meetings. And quite frankly, the sound and video in the education center has been updated in about 2 decades. And then if you're looking at the pictures here, like that laptop in the middle is what we run the education center off of, and that thing constantly gives us problems with connecting the projector. Janice is constantly having to fiddle with it. So that's something that we're looking to replace. And then that picture on the right side, that's actually a picture of a VGA cable. That's the only way to connect to the projector that's currently in the Regency room. And I would venture to say that most people's laptops out there don't have that anymore, because that's been an outdated standard for over a decade now. Carpet tripping hazard. Anybody walk down the hallways? They did this wall to wall carpet, kind of, which is more residential style. And it's bunched up, and it's caused. And honestly, we had people trip over it, and it's causing a problem. There's pulls in the carpet. It's just in general way past time to update the carpet in the building. We also have a lot of damaged ceiling tiles throughout the building. There was actually a roof leak, a pretty significant one that was here in the building. We did actually already complete the roof replacement in July of this year, and that was paid for out of reserves and is not part of the renovation budget we're going through here. But we still have a lot of damaged ceiling tiles. And a lot of people will say, well, yeah, you should have a stock room full of extras in the back and just replace them. And while that's true, we're running very low on those. I think we only have about 3 or 4 left. And then the ones we do have, they're all very dusty and dirty and generally just like 20 or 30 years old. So it's past time to replace those ceiling tiles. Also, throughout the building, there's a couple places where we have some failing light switches. There's 1 or 2 that actually kind of spark a little bit when you flip them on. We have some failing light fixtures as well. And then just general wear and tear. This building, I have kind of the question marks right in the years since last upgrade, because we've honestly tried to find the last time this building got a major upgrade. When we look around for it, we see like bits and pieces being done here or there. And when we called around and asked, most people have said that they don't remember anything since like the early 2000s, and even that we can't really find an exact thing on. That was Elaine said she thought it was about 2002 or so, but honestly, we're not even able to find anything on that. So that's why we just have question marks. It's been probably 2 decades or more since any kind of a last major upgrade. Okay, so when are we doing it? So the building task force and the board of directors have actually been talking about this for about 5 to 7 years now, again, depending on who you ask. And so there's been a lot of back and forth, and they did consider things like, do we need to consider a different location? Do we need to, maybe just do it piecemeal? They considered a lot of the different options, and this is what they landed on. And the board of directors in July did approve a $1 million building renovation to be presented to the membership. More on that in a second. Now, here in August 2025, we're having his 2 member forums and the 2 broker forums and getting as much information out there in front of all of you as we can as possible, which is going to lead us to August 28th. So there will be a vote to approve or deny the building renovation that's going to go out on your election ballot. So why are we asking for this? So there is actually part of the Bluegrass Realtors bylaws that states that any capital expenditure in excess of 25% of annual revenues must be approved by the association membership. So that is why this vote is going out to you. And we're doing it on the election ballot because we do have to have at least 10% of membership vote in order to get a quorum. And that is the best place to make sure we always get a quorum. Now, if approved, the renovations would begin during the 4th quarter of 2025, and it would complete sometime around January of 2026. And the way it works out is about 3 months of the actual general construction, and then 1 more month for furniture, technology, things like that. That can only happen once the building is dust-free and all that construction is finished. So that brings us into some of the big questions. This is, like I said, I want to just address some of the big stuff just head on. We're not going to just dance around it or beat around the bush. We're going to get straight to the biggest questions that we get asked. And the first one is, of course, can we afford this? And I want to make it very clear that Bluegrass Realtors is very healthy financially. Our months of reserves would only decrease by about 4 months with this expenditure. And even with that, we would still have more than 12 months of reserves on hand. Which brings us to the next question of, will we need to take out a loan? And no, the association has enough cash on hand that we can cover this entire project. Now, we have looked at things, different creative financing, like maybe doing an internal loan or loan against the reserves or different things like that. And our accountant and our CPA have both recommended to just pay the cash, not bring on any additional debt. And it's probably just the best way forward to make sure, especially because we'll still have more than 12 months of reserve left over after this. Which then, of course, leads into the next question is, are my dues going to increase because of this? Dues are always, and dues increases are always an ongoing conversation because of inflation. That's not something that we're going to hide. It's something that's always being talked about, but we do not anticipate an increase directly related to this decision. And while we're talking about dues, I just want to point out that Bluegrass Realtors has not increased our dues in a very, very long time. The dues increases you've seen have actually been from state and national, doing their increases based on inflation. And I also want to kind of separate a little bit that dues are more of a conversation about expenses versus revenue, versus any kind of actual cash in the bank. What reserves are for, they're for rainy days and capital expenditures like this one. So somebody else has also brought up, what if we see a major downturn in membership like we did in 2008? That's what reserves are for, because they allow you to operate without any revenue coming in for up to 12 months, while still maintaining our current level of service, which gives you time to adjust your business if necessary. So, when we're looking at dues increases, we're looking more at revenue versus expenses, because if you're starting to pull your operational budget during the year out of reserves, that's not a long-term strategy for success. So we're very healthy. Reserves are there. We're still going to have more than 12 months of reserves for those rainy days, and that this kind of capital expenditure is exactly what reserves are for. All right, so what about live classes? December is a really busy time, and yes, I agree. We're making every effort we can to not cancel any of the live classes we're currently on the calendar. We're looking at things like temporary spaces in public libraries, hotel conference rooms, or anything else necessary like that to make sure we're retaining that in-person class experience for you. And same thing with like where we go for lock boxes or signs. We're looking at securing temporary space for that as well. Lots of options on the table right now. We're not sure exactly what direction we're going to go, but we are working hard to make sure we can maintain that for you, to make sure that you keep that level of customer service that you're used to and deserve. And then that brings up another question of why make changes to the whole building? Why not just kind of do it piece by piece? And, as we started to look at things like redoing the carpet, redoing the ceiling tiles, redoing the lighting, it just became clear that it made more sense to do everything at once. And it's because, especially in the commercial construction world, doing things in phases can become really expensive because you don't get those cost savings of having people and materials already on site. So after considering all the different options, the building task force and the board of directors did decide to move forward with this option because it is the best option for us moving forward and the most financially responsible. I know that $1 million figure sounds like a lot right now up front, but if we wait, construction costs are just going to keep going up. So it just makes more sense to go ahead and do it now. How did we choose the contractor? So this project over the years has actually been put out to bid multiple times. The most recent round went to 3 different commercial contractors. After the building task force reviewed all the bids, they recommended Brett Construction Company. Then after that, the board of directors was presented with all the bids and the task force recommendation, and then ultimately the board of directors agreed with that recommendation and went forward. So this isn't a small group of just leadership just picking somebody they like. The process did go through both the building task force and the board of directors, so you have a good amount of eyes on the bids and picking that, making sure we pick the best one for the organization. This is another question we get. I don't live or work in Lexington. How does this benefit me? And this is a fair question. A good chunk of our membership is outside of the Lexington area. And, first off, I mentioned earlier technology. So the education center upgrades are going to drastically improve the audio and video quality for when we have remote access. So like when we have like a member forums, broker forums, or the non-CE presentations in this space, it's going to make it a lot better experience for anybody who's wanting to remote in for those. The upgrades do include new microphones, new speakers, 2 cameras, and there's actually going to be a video wall in here as well. So that's going to drastically improve the experience for when you do come in for classes. And then just additionally, in general, our building is the face of our brand. It influences the perception of like media, elected leaders, or other business leaders who come in here. And I have met in this building with people from outside of the area. So we just in general want to make sure that the face of our brand is the best as possible moving forward. Another question we get is like, what's a breakdown of the $1 million? So we have $431,000 going for general construction and upgrades. That's your things like the flooring, the taking out the wallpaper, repainting, all those things that I'll go into more detail in the breakdown, tearing down walls, new walls. There's $192,000 in technology upgrades. The majority of that is in the education center, but there's a little bit for the boardroom as well, and then there's some cost for relocating some technology to the second classroom. Again, a lot more detail on that later. $282,000 going towards furniture, cabinetry, decor, artwork, things like that. Again, a lot more detail coming. And then there's about a $95,000 buffer built in for just miscellaneous costs, unforeseen issues, and things like that, which brings us to the total budget of $1 million. Then that, of course, leads to the question of what's going to happen if the renovation goes over budget. So first off, the building task force and board of directors are going to maintain continuous oversight over the project. And, we're watching the expenses very closely, and we're already looking at places to cut out of that. And one of the places we're looking at is furniture. We're already kind of considering some places that we can save some money there. But as with any renovation project, unforeseen issues arise. So we have a little bit of a buffer built in, but in the unlikely case anything were to happen, we would, of course, notice to membership and be extremely transparent about what the cost overruns were for, and just be very clear about that and transparent to the membership in general. And then one of the last questions we get is there a plan to evaluate the return on investment? And yes, I mean, we have looked at, the before and after of the building, and, the value of the building does increase, of course, not by $1 million, because that's not something you consider for any renovation. But that's not really the plan. Like, we're not really planning on selling this building, so increasing the value is not truly top of mind. I'll tell you what we are looking at for investment is we want to make sure we continue to measure member satisfaction. Earlier this year, we had that survey that went out to the membership, and one of those things we're always going to make sure we're tracking is that member satisfaction, and that is what we're looking for in the return on investment. And within that survey, we had a lot of people asking for more live classes. They had a lot of comments about sound quality. We had a lot of comments about remote options. Survey results also ranked education as the number one most important benefit to your business and the number one place you want us to put the most emphasis. And I think that is reflected in this building plan, where the majority of this is going into the education center. And again, you'll see more of that later in the detailed floor plan review. So speaking of that, let's actually dive in. So again, like I mentioned before, for people that aren't interested in like the nitty-gritty details, this is a good place you might want to jump off. But I'm actually going to go through and go just area by area and talk about every single thing that's happening in the building across the floor plan here. So starting with over in this classroom area, if you can see my pointer, this is where there's a couple walls being removed. Currently, the current member workspace and 2 offices are right here. But we're removing them to make room for that new classroom. Up here in the store, my face is kind of in the way, but we're adding some new walls in there to make better use of the space. We're adding 2 offices there, and then adding this new meeting room right here that I'll talk about more in a bit. We're also adding a wall right here where this space is to make 2 new offices there. And then we're removing this wall in the education room. Right now, it just makes a hallway, and that space doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we're moving that wall to make the most of that space and make the education room a little bit bigger. And then when we're removing this wall from the member workspace, I want to point out you're not losing that. It just moves to the back of the building over here where my mouse is now. And again, more details coming in that in a second. And then just real quickly, just kind of pointing out, these are just kind of some design boards from the designer. The stuff that's on here isn't exactly the furniture. This is more of a kind of a vision for the space. And one of the things that she worked on with this is just in general, like, it is a commercial space. We're getting commercial quality furniture, but we want to have a little bit more of a residential feel to really reflect what's important to realtors and just have this really nice space. So again, you're going to get better shots of this as we go through and have a couple of renderings for you as well, actually. So in the education center, I already mentioned that we're eliminating that wall right here to make room to take that hallway out and make the space a little bit bigger. I'll also point out that the door to the kitchen is being expanded to be a double door, and then we're adding in a island in the kitchen there for serving food. If anybody's come in for classes in that education area, right now we have got like 2 somewhat lopsided tables in there instead. So we're adding that island to make it a lot nicer space. And then this area right now that's just kind of a little storage room is going to be blown out, and we're going to have another countertop there for like your beverages. It kind of gives you a beverage space to get to. Here's a kind of a picture of the island and what it's going to look like. And an important thing to point out here is that the island is being built to intentionally offset the cabinets that are in there now, because we're not redoing the cabinets in that space. That's a place we're actually trying to save money. We're not redoing the cabinets or appliances in the kitchen. We're just adding this island. So we're going with that trend of like deliberately offsetting it so it looks different from the rest of it. And then you can kind of see the wallpaper that's going up in the back of the education center there as well. Technology-wise, there's going to be a new 163-inch LED video wall in the space. Have you guys ever been to like a concert, or maybe you've seen it at church or other places where you've seen presentations? Those LED video walls are really nice. And I do want to point out that we're not just spending the money here. We did look at doing a projector in the space instead, but to have one that be bright enough, it would have only been about $5,000 more to go with the video wall, so it just made sense to go that route. We're also getting new speakerphones, micros, 2 new cameras, as I mentioned already. There's going to be a confidence monitor for instructors so they can keep better track of the class as they go through it. And there's going to be a dedicated podium with a dedicated PC in it. And that, going back to what I talked about with Janice and that laptop being the bane of her existence, this makes it much more where it's you walk in the room, you push a button, and it's turned on, and we're ready to go. So we have that dedicated modem, gives you a much easier to manage experience. So next we're going to move up to the reception area. Right now when you walk in, there's an airlock right here, and then there's kind of a wall that separates the store. Well, that wall and airlock comes out, which is going to greatly just open up that reception area and make access to the store easier. Quick note, we will still have the store. The store is not going anywhere. We're just going to be reducing the footprint of the space. It's going to have all the same inventory you're used to in being in there right now. We're also going to be removing that built-in desk that the staff is behind right now, where you can't even see them sometimes when you first walk in the door. And having just, and the few times you do have to wait, which isn't often with our staff, we want to have some more comfortable seating in the space area, in the area there, and just make it more open and inviting. Here's kind of the example from the designer of kind of what we're going for with the staff desk. Just much more open and inviting. And then here's actually a rendering that we have of, kind of that stacked marble look behind the desk there. Just much more open and accessible for staff when you walk in the building. And then there's also going to be some some pocket doors that go over to the casual meeting room, and I'll show you that when we get to that area in a second. So then in the back, we have this additional classroom. So the point back here is to provide more flexibility for hosting smaller classes and sessions. So this is for, if the education center is booked, we'll have a second space so we can do another class or maybe a broker office meeting or things like that. And all of the tables in this room are on casters. So you can actually, they can actually be nested or stacked up and get out of the way, or you can do them in additional configurations. So we can use this for committee meetings. We can set them up for different things like that. It really makes this a very flexible space that can be used for a lot of different things. So again, second classes, broker meetings, committee meetings, things like that. And here's kind of a rendering for it for you. We actually are going to be relocating an existing projector and screen to this space. We didn't go all new technology everywhere. There's some that can be reused, and a lot of that is going into this space. It is still going to get new speakers and microphones. We're not reusing the speakers and microphones that are currently Education Center because they are well past their useful life. But there is a couple pieces of the audio equipment we're able to reuse to save some money there. And that makes that additional classroom tech-enabled for you as well. Then we get into what I call the enhanced member area. So there's a casual meeting room, there's going to be a dedicated studio, there's a member workspace, and the boardroom and the Regency room. So let's go through those now. So the casual meeting space is up near the front of the building. Like I said, there's going to be those pocket doors that kind of open to the store and the area in the front of the building there. And it's really good for like those 4 or 6 person meetings. You can see there's like a little kind of couch and table area, and then there's also a conference table. I have some renderings of this for you, show you in a second. But just to kind of give you an idea of the space, it looks very cozy, very inviting. So here's a rendering of the space that has the couch and the 2 chairs. And then we also have kind of this conference table for you as well. And the point there is to just make it a very, Very intimate, very cozy space for those 4 to 6 person meetings, and that's up right next to the front of the building for you there. Then you have this. There's also this dedicated studio space. So it's really just kind of a couch, a chair, and a table. It's not very fancy, but it is going to have dedicated lighting in this space, because one of the things you want in a studio is that dedicated lighting that you don't have to like take up or set up and take down all the time. And this is going to be great for, if the media comes by and they want to do an interview, or it's going to be great for, like I can do my podcasts in here. Just kind of that dedicated studio space to really lean more into video for the membership. And of course, that space is available for member use as well. So if there's something that you want to come in and record, just let us know, and the space is available for you as well. Next up, we have the member workspace. So this I talked about it was in the side of the building there, and then there's a couple walls being taken down. There's going to move it to the back of the building. So you'll still have 24/7 access to the space via Sentry Lock. If you didn't know we had that space, we have that space. And it does have computers and a printer in there for you for after hours needs. And you are still going to have that. Here's kind of a view of what we're looking for the space. And then here's actually a rendering for you. We're going to kind of have these cubicles in there, a couple high tops with some seating where you can go in there and work on your laptop. And then those cubicles are where we're going to have some dedicated desktops for you as well. Now, over in the boardroom, this is really good for like your 8 to 20 person meetings. And this space is also going to have some updated technology that's going to make it really good for hybrid meetings. So it's going to have some in-ceiling microphones and speakers and cameras. And one thing I really love pointing out here is, even though we call this the boardroom, it's not only for the board of directors. Members can, of course, use this space anytime they want as well. We also have committee meetings in here. And in general, it's just a highly used meeting space in the building. So if you have something that would be like 8 to 20 people, that would be really good to be able to have a hybrid option for, let us know. It's available for you to use as well. But in that space, new 110-inch display, in-ceiling microphones, dedicated speaker, and new microphones. Or new speakers, I mean. Then the Regency room is being redone as well, getting a new conference table and chairs and a new projector in there with wireless connectivity. So that's where I showed you where the only way to connect to the projector that's in there right now was via VGA, a standard that's been out of use for more than a decade. So you'll be able to go in there and utilize that space. It'll be really good for 8 to 12 person meetings. It will not have hybrid capability. It'll just have the projector in there, but that'll be a good space for you to utilize there. Some other changes, I talked about the 2 office spaces here. This one in the front is actually going to be mine. We're moving the CEO back up to the front of the building, make sure I'm very accessible for members, because that's something that's really important to me. And then we have that casual meeting room going up there as well. I talked already about this wall being added, where we're adding 2 more cubicle spaces. And then another one is that this office that's currently Sarah's office is going to be the new copy room. The old copy room is just way too big for what's being used there, so that's actually going to become storage space. And the long-term plan there is that we'll get some different types of tables that can go to the education center. Maybe we get some rounds or different things like that, so that makes the education center a more flexible and usable space. Although that's more of a future plan, but we want to have to make sure we have the storage for that one whenever we're ready for it. Now, throughout the entire building, we are getting new flooring. So there's going to be luxury vinyl plank in the reception, the hallways, the education center, and the casual meeting room and the retail space. And then all the other areas are going to be carpet tiles. That's a lot better for commercial applications, because if something goes wrong with the tile, you just pull it up and put down a new tile. It's a lot easier for care and maintenance long term as well. And it's just going to be a lot better for our commercial space. So that's where you're going to see those carpet tiles throughout the building. And then just a total refresh all the way around. All new ceiling tiles, as mentioned. All new LED light fixtures throughout the building. All new light switches, because like I talked about, we have some that are wearing out on us. We're going to be removing the wallpaper and repainting for a consistent look throughout the building. And then speaking of a consistent look, we're getting new furniture for all the staff as well. So if you walk through the building these days, you're going to notice there are multiple decades of different furniture throughout the building. So really, we just want to have a more consistent and professional feel throughout the building for everybody. And that does include getting new office furniture for staff as well. Now, last thing I want to touch on is just a couple places where we deliberately saved some money, because I want you guys to know, like, this has not been a process where we're just like, oh, spend here, spend there. No, we've been very deliberate about this process, and I want to point out some places that we were very deliberate about making sure we saved money. And one of those is that there's no relocation of existing utilities. We're not touching any kitchens. We're not touching any bathrooms. The only utility that's being taken out is that the space next to the education center and kitchen right now actually has a mop sink in it. We're taking that out because we don't need it. Beyond that, we're not relocating any existing utilities, so there's not that exorbitant cost that happens with that. Again, no work in the bathrooms, no work in the kitchen, except for adding an island, which is just cabinets. That's easy. We are actually refinishing the doors and trim throughout the building instead of getting brand new ones. There's a pretty significant savings cost there. We were also very intentional to make sure that none of our wall moving required new sprinklers. You guys know, if you've worked in commercial before, when you start talking about new sprinklers, your costs can go up very quickly. So we were very careful to make sure that none of our wall removals or additions require new sprinklers. We are retaining the furniture in the boardroom and the education center. The education center, the chairs in there, frankly, we're saving them because everybody loves them. I haven't heard any complaints, and if anything, Janice actually says that people rave about them. So we're wanting to make sure we keep that in the education center. As I mentioned, we are reusing some existing tech in places. We didn't just go new tech because we could. There were some projectors and some screens and some pieces of the audio equipment that are still good enough, and we're reusing those when possible. And then finally, minimal demo and new walls. We're knocking down the wall in the reception and the education room, and there's two in the back, and then we have new walls just to create those two new offices up front, and then the new office is in the kind of center of the building there. But other than that, we really try to keep that to a minimum. So just across the board, we tried really hard to save money where we could, and we were very intentional and deliberate about making sure that we're doing the best we can with the members' money. So, of course, if you have any questions, please reach out. We have that help@bluegrassrealtors.com. You can always address that to me if you have any questions. My email is richard@bluegrassrealtors.com. Certainly not a hard one to find. And just reach out and let us know. If you have questions or concerns that weren't answered in here, I want to talk about it. I would love to have a conversation with you. You can reach out to any of your board of directors or your leadership. Reach out to them and have a conversation as well. And just in general, let's just make this an exciting time for Bluegrass Realtors. I'll wrap up with just kind of a comment that this is going to be the third building renovation I've been a part of. And I promise you, I haven't been the one starting it. In all three cases, I've been the one tasked with finishing it. But in both of the first two, it brought a new energy to the organization. It brought new vitality. People were excited to be part of it. The problems that we were having at my previous organizations with getting people to sign up for committees or directors disappeared. And of course, we don't have much of that problem here, but still, I'm looking forward to bringing that new vitality to the building, having members coming through here more often, and just in general giving us that personal touch point that we really like to make sure we have with our membership. So if you watched this far, thanks for watching. Again, please reach out if you have any kind of questions. We are here, and we are committed to being as open and transparent about this process as possible. Thank you all, and have a wonderful day.